Hello, hello, hello. I'm just checking that we have gone live. Hope you guys are all good out there. Yes, it's all coming up. How are we all? So, how are we all, people? Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the webinar this evening on imposter syndrome and where to start. And I thought I'd just wait for a few more people to come online. Sorry about the lovely image quality that we've got coming up there. It is first time I'm trying it, and unfortunately, as you always do, you have technical issues. So thought I would just kick it off with working with what I've got. And so yeah, tonight I am going to be talking to people and talking to you guys about imposter syndrome and where to start. So I'm hoping there's a few more people will jump online as the word and the message starts to get out. It is just after 1 minute past 7, so we may as well get started. All right, so imposter syndrome, where to start? So I'm going to jump straight on into the presentation, and we're going to have a quick look. Firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Matt Steer, and you may have seen me around, you may not have seen me around. I've been a nurse in the healthcare system for over 20 years, and I've had a passion for life coaching for some period of time, and that's what I'm here for today. And I want to share with you what my experiences with imposter syndrome and moving into coaching. So I want to jump. Firstly, let's discuss imposter syndrome, and it's something that many people experience. And it started initially, like when it was the original thought around imposter syndrome was that it was with women, and it actually is a lot with men as well. It's up to 70% of people at some stage of their life through their career are affected by imposter syndrome. This affects males and females, and certainly in the Journal of Behavioral Science, in this study there back in 2012, they found that that it was affecting males and females. This is going across both demographics. Some people are affected quite heavily. Some people are able to develop the tools and the strategies to help them move forward in life when similar circumstances are presented with them. So what I'd like to do is, by the end of this presentation, we're going to be able to know where to start to managing imposter syndrome. Tools to help you show up as your best, and managing the associated emotions that inevitably come up in these situations. They come up whenever we're presented with events where we may feel like we're an imposter. So in uni, we are taught how to manage patients. We're taught how to manage conditions. What we're never shown is how to manage the internal dialogue that we have, this internal conversation that's going on. We're not taught about how our conscious mind and our unconscious mind manages. We're not taught about how past events is stored in our unconscious memory, and they come up and remind us at certain times when certain triggers happen in our world. They remind us about a pain that we potentially experienced in the past, and so instead of feeling like we should be moving forward, we're still feeling that pain, even though at the moment we're feeling like we're in a bit of conflict. And so for many healthcare professionals, will experience feelings of being an imposter in their role at some stage of their life, maybe more than once. Wouldn't it be great if there were tools and strategies to take control? All right, so who is this webinar for? If you're a healthcare professional struggling to celebrate your success, fears of judgment or being found out, feelings of not enough, experiencing self-doubt, and I'm sure a lot of us have experienced that, yeah? And perfectionist tendencies, and that was one of my biggest challenges. And it's funny, just before I jumped on the webinar, someone from where I used to work at Prince Charles jumped on, and their comment was, "It's great to see how far you've come." And it's back then I was struggling with perfectionist tendencies, and it's great to see that someone who I previously worked with at Prince Charles was able to see jump on and see how far I've come with the work that we've been able to do, what I've been able to do, I should say. So who is this presentation not for? Anyone who's looking for a magic pill. And I'm sorry, this stuff, as much as we're in medicine and as much as there's many drugs for many different things, we don't have a magic pill for this. And people who aren't ready for change, in order to move forward with imposter syndrome, who are wanting to create a life under their own, what they want, what they're determined to do, remove that old past history out of their life and want to move forward. If you're not ready to make that change then this webinar is not for you. If you're interested in learning, great, stick around. But for me, if you're not ready to dig deep, because that's what we're going to have to do, then this is not for you. All right, so how do we get the most out of this training? Firstly, turn off your phone, turn off Messenger, put Do Not Disturb, all that kind of stuff on. Kill it. Be present. So the greatest way that we can use our time is to be present. And for those of you who know me, I've recently become a father, and all of a sudden time that I thought I had a lot of has become very small. And so whenever I'm in training, in education, whenever anything like that's happening, being present helps you to learn a lot more. Not be distracted by your phone, not being distracted by other things. Take loads of notes. Having said that, I said to keep your phone away. Take loads of notes while you're here. Write things down. This is how you do it. Once you actually start physically writing things down, you'll start to cement what you're learning into your memory. And ask lots of questions. I'm going to have a chat going on. I see there's some people in there commenting. Jump on, ask lots of questions. I'll try and answer some of them at the end if there's things that are in there. Otherwise, you can DM me or in the chat, in the conversations afterwards, and I'll get back to you. All right, so who is Matt Steer? And as I said to you, I've been in healthcare for over 20 years. And before I even got into being nursing, I actually applied to be a paramedic. And at that stage, I was told I wasn't smart enough to be a paramedic. I progressed on to being a nurse and eventually working in intensive care, and I've worked in an emergency. So I guess that was, removed out of my life. But at the same time, that experience is still very much cemented in the past. In 2010 I had reached what I thought was the climax, what I thought was the pinnacle of my career, and decided I needed to start experiencing more from my life. I also hit rock bottom at the same time. And that experience has been the greatest journey that I have walked since then. Since this last 12 years, since 2010, I've walked a great journey where I took my life from where it was and what I thought it was and what I thought I was limited in being able to do, to creating life on my terms. Marrying a beautiful woman, having a child, and being able to create what I want to have in my life. But I had to go through those periods of feeling like an imposter. I felt like I was never enough big to be able to walk in those roles. I felt like I was thrown into positions for which I just was not ready for. And my journey took me on a path where I began to learn the tools and the strategies to help me to move forward. It helped me to be able to take control in those situations where those feelings and emotions begin to rise within me, where I have those self-doubts, where that inner dialogue began to bring you down. And it was a wonderful and grateful experience that I've been able to go on, and I want to share that with you guys. So what are you going to learn here today? So firstly, imposter syndrome can start from a variety of places, and I ask you if you could please just give me a little bit of time. I'm going to bore you with some technical details coming up in a couple of slides, but it will help you to set the foundation and understand that imposter syndrome can start from a variety of different places, and that if you want to start to understand where it is, then you need to first see how the mind begins to work. And this leads us on to perception is projection. So we'll dig into that a little bit deeper. Managing self-talk. Now this is one of the tools that my clients instantly grab hold of and they begin to implement into their life. This one and the last one, learning to celebrate. But before we get to learning to celebrate, we first need to become aware of the internal conflict that's going on inside of you. We need to be conditioning new patterns and things that you want to have into your nervous system if you want to be able to keep moving forward. And then learning to celebrate. So let's jump into it. So as I just asked, please give me a little bit of time here to go through a few technical details. We will, but it helps you to understand the framework that I understand and what helped me move forward with imposter syndrome. Then we're going to look at perception is projection. So we're going to understand the filters. This is the technical stuff, and then how our minds begin to fill the blanks. So I love this definition of perception is projection. It is the world is a reflection of your inner thoughts, feelings, values, and beliefs. In other words, the outer world is a reflection of what's going on inside. And I think that's a fantastic way of looking at things, and we'll dive into the filters very shortly. But for me, that sums it up pretty simply. It's our thoughts, it's our feelings, it's our values, and it's our beliefs. It's that internal, what we're seeing internally is what is projected out into the outside world. And that came from a book of Find Your Purpose, Master Your Path. So let's set the scene here. Let's set the scene. So anyone who's worked in an emergency department, you would have seen potentially you would have seen, I should say, a car accident. And I've worked at a trauma center. I got to see many times where driver A would come in and you would see and hear their assessment about what happened at that event. Then there's driver B, and you would hear the story about what happened at that event. Now there's often common threads that are coming through what they're saying, but their perception and what they see is often different. Then you get to paramedic handover, who has a completely different view about the incident and the scene and other data that they're able to look at before they even come to the hospital. So they're providing you with a different story. Then there's the police officer who's doing the investigation, and that person has a completely different focus when they're coming into that scene. And when they share their story, you sort of sit there and you scratch your head a little bit going, is this the same story? Were these people all at the same scene? What it is it's the filters and how they're seeing the scene that they're then creating the story in their mind. They're creating an internal perception about what's happened. And often there's data that's missed, and we'll get into that in just a second. But for those of you who have experienced that, where you've heard the two different stories from two different people that were present at the same scene, it's because they took different pieces of data coming in that they observed or what was important to them at the time. So that leads us on to filters. And filters are, this is from an NLP language concept that they use, and this is I've done NLP study. And so what happens is that our minds have about 2 million pieces of data right now that we could be focused on. All right, so in there I could be focused on Cub, who's barking next door, the dog next door. We focused on the air conditioner, the fan that's running just up here. Any pieces of this information I could be focused on and listening, and I can dig deep into how Cub's potentially barking, or anything else that I'm hearing, not focused here on this webinar. This data that's all coming into me is available to me in this moment. All right, so when we're saying your perception is your projection, this data is available to every person around you right now. All around you, there's about 2 million bits of data, and they come in, and our brains can't deal with that much information. So what happens is that we've got a set of filters, okay? The filters are time, space, matter, energy, language, memories, decisions, meta programs, values and beliefs, and attitudes. So what happens? The data comes in from the outside world. It goes through these filters. And what happens is that we create this internal representation of the information that's out there. So I hope you're starting to see how that in imposter syndrome, these are where potentially in your filters, issues could be coming up, where potentially you're starting to feel like an imposter. Could be from a memory in the past. The language or the tone was a trigger. Maybe it's a decision that you made. Those decisions that you made when you were under 7 still impact you today. Your values and beliefs come from this. They either are supporting you or holding you back, and your body, your subconscious mind is filtering this information so it can give you an internal representation about what's going on, as well as your attitudes. Now this affects our mood, this affects our state, and our physiology. I'm not going to go into that too much on this webinar, but our physiology can also affect our mood, affect our state, and that also affects our internal representation about what's going on. I'm not going to go into that too much. That's definitely going to be another webinar, but all of these things are interrelated. But when the data that's all coming in, that's coming into you, when that information's coming in, it's filtering through all of these filters, and then it's giving you that internal representation. And that's why it may not come up once you've finished shooting, you're presented on a particular situation, because those are where the triggers are. Now, this information then is either deleted, it's distorted, or generalized. Because again, we can't deal with so much data in our internal representation. So obviously we can delete information, we can distort it, blank out, only focus on the parts that we want to. So we've all heard about our reticular activating system. So if it's got a distorted view and it's trying to focus on things, it's not going to give you a good, it's not going to put your focus on the right thing at the time. And we can generalize information. This is like this, so it's close enough. So we generalize that being into the same category. So again, something that may have happened in our past now is a trigger as we move forward. And I'm going to dive into that with inner conflict very shortly. So, as I just mentioned, imposter syndrome can come from childhood events. It can come from memories of the past. So when I'm working with clients, memories of the past, we can help redefine them, reshape them, so that they create a more empowering, more meaningful definition to you. There are other techniques that we can do through hypnosis as well, and they're fantastic, and we get to go in there and start to create new meanings with them. That's a great tool. Decisions that we made. Do you think that we made decisions back when we were 1-year-old or 2-year-old? We have. We made decisions about things when someone was crying, because they weren't given the toy or something else, and that might have meant something. And if you're still holding on to that decision, that's affecting you now. Our values and beliefs can be either created back when we were very young, and now we've got a new value. So your value may be around. One of your values may be around you can't if you have a you don't like sales, and you're trying to create your own business. If you've gone from being a consultant, you finished your fellowship, you've done your training, you're now moving into developing your own specialty, you want to create your own specialty, go into private practice, yet you have a resistance to sales because all salespeople are money hungry, or whatever it is, that the belief that you have that you created at a very young age, that will affect your business, that will affect you today. And our attitudes as well. Our general attitude. So again, I said about our physiology, and I said about our mood, our state. That affects our attitudes and how we're seeing things. So any of these can be a source of the emotions being experienced in the moment. And when you think about imposter syndrome, there is an accompanying emotion that we have, and we have the ability to change that. But the goal is to find out at this stage right now is to start to see whether or not that emotion is real or whether it's not. So sometimes this can also be a sign that you need to upskill. Just saying, it can be. I saw Jag on here just before, and he's helped me with developing the skills that I need to in order to get this webinar live. Yeah, he's a coach. So my fear about getting this webinar out, and I talked about it in the post that I put out a couple of hours ago, I had resistance around getting the information that I have here in my head and that I know and I work with people into a platform online for the world to see. Okay, so part of that was real with what I was saying. I didn't have the skills. So I found someone who helped me to get the skills that I needed to create this webinar. Yeah? Some of it's not real, and a lot of the time it's not. We've linked it up to some sort of event that's happened within our filters, and that's a trigger that we're now responding from. So how do you start to move forward? How do you start to become aware of what's going on in your conscious and your unconscious mind? The first thing is start writing a journal. Start writing a journal. Now, I'm not talking about the Dear Diary, I've done this for the day type stuff. I'm talking about actually starting to put a journal together about what positive things have happened, and keep that in a separate section so you've got easy access to it, okay? But you want to start keeping a track of the good things that happen in your life so you've got a record of it. I want to clarify at this point about, I just talked about a conscious and the unconscious mind, and there's I want to set the reference so that we have a common meaning by what I'm talking about here on this webinar. And firstly, conscious. So the conscious mind makes up about 4% of what we actually know. In the past, it was believed it made up about 10%, but it's what we are consciously aware of in this moment. What are we consciously aware of versus the unconscious awareness, okay? And that is what we're not consciously, we are unconsciously aware, yeah? It's our unconscious mind working in the background. So if we're looking to call up pieces of information, or perhaps an event has happened and it's been a trigger for us, which is where imposter syndrome might come up, it starts digging around in the back of our mind, looking for previous events that could have happened, and that has a significant event that has a strong emotion attached to it. Now all of a sudden, so let's just say I'm not good enough to progress into that. And we had an event that happened in our life that was really strong, and it's anchored now, and our unconscious mind knows this. So it's going to shine a light and say, hello, do you want to feel this pain? Do you want to feel this discomfort again? And that is why we need to become aware of the unconscious mind, understand the inner conflicts that potentially come up. And again, I'll talk about that very, very shortly. But that's what's going on here. And so these are outside of our conscious awareness. This is happening in the background. All right, is this starting to make sense? Starting to see? Fantastic. Cool, thanks guys. So is this starting to make sense? I hope so. Certainly made, when I started to understand this information and started to see how these filters are, and we generalize, it helped me to move forward. It helped me to start really fine-tuning when things weren't working for me, where I needed to start to go and look. So I want to talk about our self-talk. Now this is the inner dialogue. This is the inner background conversation, the Woody Allen, as I've heard it described before, going on in the back of our mind. So what do we need to do to become aware of it? For most people, they're not aware of these conversations that are going on. But what we need to find out what actually makes self-talk. We need to find out whether or not our self-talk is going to affect our mood. So it's going to affect our internal representation. And the other concept that it took me quite a few years until recently to really understand, and that's why I've been talking about emotions and feelings a little bit. As a visual person, a lot of the time, I didn't understand emotions, but yet emotions make life, don't they? Our life is the sum experience of the emotions for which we experience and hold on to and relive. So wouldn't it be great if we were able to be conscious and generate the emotions that we want to experience, and we can do that through self-talk. So self-talk is also known as that inner dialogue. So if I'm saying inner dialogue or self-talk, they're interchangeable in this webinar, okay? For me, I'm not saying to you guys that self-talk is a voice in your head. As healthcare professionals, I'm not talking about that voice that we're wearing, those command hallucinations and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about that running commentary that you have going on. My butt looks big in this. Hey, I'm a nurse. I've heard that plenty of times when I've been on the ward, especially when I've been the only male on a shift. Things like that is like you have that quiet conversation, questioning yourself, question your ability. Now this is constantly going on in the background, and it's estimated that around 64,000 of these conversations a day are going on in the back of our mind, but we're not conscious or have put constructive and positive conversations into our mind so that we are moving towards what we want versus taking us away or not facing our fear. Like as I said to you with Jag, I had allowed, when it came to this part of doing marketing, I was like, I didn't really want to do that. I had to take control of that conversation in order to move forward. So what makes our self-talk? It's other people's beliefs. It's things you've heard or part heard. You know, when you only hear part of the conversation, then your brain has to try and make up the rest of the information. Then the self-talk continues over. Even though it's missing data, it has to make it up and try and fill those voids. So our self-talk's going in the background. It's the stories that we told. If a great story has been told and we learn the meanings from those stories, those conversations can go on just as much as a disempowering story. Just like when we listen to, patient stories about how an incident happened, they get caught quite often in the story, not actually the detail that we need in order to help provide assessments with them. We quite often are replaying conversations, and we can have pop culture. So these can go on all in the back of our mind all day long, and at 64,000 conversations, that's a lot of unconscious awareness of information that's going on, that's chattering in the back of my mind. So I'm wondering, what is your self-talk saying? What is it that you've currently got going on in the back of your mind? Is your self-talk positive, or is your self-talk holding you back? Is your self-talk bringing you forward, or keeping where you are? Is your self-talk right now, when you're facing those feelings of feeling like an imposter, when you're not feeling like you're enough, when you feel like you're not quite ready for those moments, and you're focusing on that one thing? So Brené Brown describes it really, really well, and she talks about how those moments when we're all in healthcare, and you've got to do if you're in the government sector, you've got to do your performance plans. Now, nothing different to a business plan. And it's about setting your goals and about moving forward, yeah? It's about creating that future of what you want to have. And you put that into your plan. So you might go into your boss, and I see one of the CNCs from one of the places Belinda is on. She does those PDs for the nurses. Now, she may give 99 great things about you, but then there's this one area for improvement. Now, what does our self-talk often focus on? That one thing, isn't it? So what is your self-talk saying to you? Is it focused on that one area for improvement? And it might just be an area for improvement. You've done so well for everything else. These 99 other wonderful things that's been recognized by patients, by staff, and etc. But you're focused on the 99 other things, not you're not focused on that 99 great things that have happened, yeah? So can our self-talk affect our mood? So these are the emotions that we're feeling and experiencing in any moment. Yes, they can. So could you change how you feel when you don't feel like you're ready for that thing? That when you're not enough, when you're not able to step up into that next moment? Could you change them? So the first step is to become aware of your self-talk. All right, and like I said to you, with my clients, when I talk to them and we do a session on coaching around self-talk and strategies and tools and what's actually been said, they're able to work straight away on it. They're able to become consciously aware of it. When they're walking into exams, they're using their self-talk. They'll create an anchor so that they can fire it ready, so that instead of feeling like, I can't do this exam, I'm not ready, they're fired up, they're ready to go. They go in with a positive state, and their self-talk is, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. So you need to understand also where your self-talk might come up. Is there particular people, type situations, events, environments? When is it holding you back? So start in your journey, begin to consciously create empowering self-talk. I use it all the time. Going to the gym, before I came here on this webinar, getting myself ready, telling my unconscious mind what I want it to be focused on, not on the 2 million other bits of information that it potentially could be focused on. I want it to be focused here on this webinar. So you create empowering self-talk that's going to help you to move forward. we also need to become aware of the meaning that we've attached to our self-talk. So, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper here. So what works for one person may not work for you. So I may give you a self-talk that every day in every way I'm getting stronger and stronger. And for me, that resonates really well. The meaning for that, I've got a strong picture in my head. I've got feelings, I've got an emotion to that. And it vibes me up. Oh, here's a city. It's wonderful. It fires me up, ready, yeah? But for someone else, that may not work for them. So go and start to experiment. Go and test. Go and try a few different things and find out what's your juice. Find out what your juice is with getting you to work up, and be okay with the fact that just because it works for one person doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. You need to find your sweet spot with your information, with your self-talk. You need to find that sweet spot that's going to pick you up and drive you, push you, move you forward. All right. So, all right, how's everything going? We've got, yeah, excellent, fantastic. All right, so hope that's really helpful for you guys. We're going to jump over to some internal conflict, and we're going to start off with nothing has meaning except the meaning you choose to give it. I'll say that again. Nothing has meaning except the meaning you choose to give it. And for me, this was a belief I actually changed quite a while back, and it's been one of the biggest meanings that biggest things that I relate back to, and I certainly talk to a lot of my clients about that as well. Nothing has meaning except the meaning you choose to give it. And this helps for us to start digging deeper into this internal conflict, because often within an internal conflict we've got two parts. Yeah. Oh, I jumped straight in. I just started jumping straight down into the content. So we're going to have a look at how reframing meaning can change your life. Identify the different parts and bring them, and we want to be bringing these two different parts into your highest purpose. All right, so again, nothing has meaning except the meaning you choose to give it. I want you, if you want to have one big takeaway after the self-talk, this is it. Start to consciously choose the meaning that you want to be attaching to events in the past, events now. It's up to you what you want to do. Internal conflict. So this is where we have that part that of me that wants this, and this part that wants this. Yeah? So often there's two parts, and we start to have these different conflicts. So where this might start to play out for you, you've been working really hard. Your boss has come to you and said, it's your turn to be in charge today. This is whether or not you're a registrar and you're stepping into a senior reg. This could be the senior RN that's on the floor. But there's part of you that's super excited, and there's part of you that's really holding you back. Now, this is obviously, if it's a short-term thing, that's manageable. You're able to move forward. But I'm talking about this is when it comes up regularly. Now, there's a part of you that feels that stepping into that, if you're feeling like you're not enough, not ready for that, there is something that's still going on in the back of our mind. Our unconscious mind is highlighting those parts where it's been hurt in the past. Generally, that stuff happened when we were a child, when we were a kid. And we have some sort of belief or a memory or a decision we made at that point about why it's too hard for us to step up, why we can't do that. But then there's this other side of us that is saying, yeah, I'm ready to step up. I want to do it. I'm ready to take on to that next role. I'm ready to, move into a consultant role or move into that CN role, whatever that is for you. So you've got this internal conflict. We need to become aware, and I wonder what would happen for you if you became aware of this and began to journal about that. What are these two parts saying, especially when they come up regularly in different situations? Ultimately, these two parts actually want to help you. They want to help you move forward. They ultimately are actually trying to do the same thing. They are. I've done this many, many times. I've had this done to myself. I had to find my two parts and bring them together. Yep. So ultimately, it was the highest intention of what both of these things wanted that helped me to get and bring them together to resolve that conflict. So they want to serve your highest intention. Now, your life has evolved. You've changed. And so these decisions that we've made when we were 4 years old, now that we're 40, maybe, in our way, maybe could be holding us back. Maybe haven't gotten to a stage yet where we're ready to deal with it, move on, move forward, So we have to become aware of these decisions or events or memories that we're 4 years old that are now shaping our lives. Create new meaning. Be aware of the emotions that are associated with them. So our unconscious mind assigns meaning. Is it the same? Is that back then the same? So how do we move forward with this? How do we begin to take control? We need to start journaling. Journaling and awareness is the single starter. When I sank down into my spot, when I felt like I was at the top, I needed to move on. Couldn't deal with anything. I thought I was there, and anyway, I was at my breaking point. Journaling was the single point that helped me to begin to raise that awareness. I began to see what was in conflict. I began to see what my self-talk was going on. I began to see what I was anchored to from the past. So awareness plus what it is that you want to feel. So I'm going to start stacking on what I said to you about journaling. We want to start journaling about not just about the good things, about those good events. We want to be journaling also about the things that we want to feel. So how does that look for you? If I write every day, what are the 3 top emotions that I want to be experiencing? And just keep them with me. And I'm constantly striving for that. Constantly working each day for that, striving for those emotions. Begin to ask those questions such as, what could X, whatever it is that you're talking about, mean? What could it mean? So, what else could these things mean? What else? What else? And start writing these things in your journal. Put in them pen to paper. And trust me, when you begin to start seeing the trends, you start to see the patterns that have been developed that you're going back to, the patterns that are habitualized in your life, you'll begin to see what else things could mean. So now that we've been able to start to take control of the conversations, we're beginning to see what's going on in our minds. We're starting to look at that internal conflict. We need to condition these. We need to condition them into our nervous system. We need to be bringing the new neural pathways that we're creating through learning, through conditioning, through reinforcement. We need to start to condition them, and there is only one way to put them into your nervous system. So I talked about JAG helping me to move forward, and this week I had another event happen that I found pretty amazing, and I had an internal conflict that was going on. Conversations were not aligned in my head, and then I went to an event that was for coaches, and so the trainer that was there is a trainer who's for coaches. So they're the people who deal with people like me. And while I was there, they identified a part conflict. Yep, a part conflict. We were able to bring them together very quickly, and I was very, very fortunate to have someone who I turned to for a bit of coaching, and we worked together. And because we've got a great rapport, we were able to deal with that in 10 minutes. But it doesn't stop there. I need to be conditioning that new part so that it becomes cemented. I create new neural connections and strengthen those connections in our nervous system so that becomes the dominant force. We need to condition that into our nervous system. We need to be letting go of the old habits, those old patterns, and conditioning the new ones, however that is looking for you. So my question is for you is, do you stop learning after you've completed university? Do you stop? No, you continue. Our careers are nothing but an ongoing education. It's just a continual educational system, and as we're going through, we're developing and learning new information. So conditioning our neural connections is the same. We need to be connecting, bringing them together. We need to be making them stronger, and it's an ongoing process. We have to keep practicing and practicing and practicing what it is that we want. The practice builds strength in your new neural connections. So, what are you going to do with this information? How do you begin to have the connections in, how do we create connections and strengthen them? We need to start finding accountability partners, someone who's going to hold you accountable. Start having that person who's going to make sure that you do what you say you're going to do. So you start conditioning your pathways. If you're going to start making sure that you are going to have positive self-talk, and you're going to do something that interrupts when you identify that you fall off the wagon, which you will. When you fall off the wagon, you will have a process to get back in. Your accountability partner, you want to be checking in. Keep a record of how often that's happened. So you want to start finding that accountability partner. Now, creating a resource anchor is also a great way. So if our life is made up of emotions, we can actually consciously create emotions and triggers for emotions within our bodies. And personally, I've got quite a few of them. One of them is when I'm faced with an emergency situation, and I know that the moment I'm faced with that high pressure situation, those high events, for me, I step into a breath awareness, and that leads to me being singularly focused at the same time, expanding my awareness out 180 degrees. And that, when that happens, that's a trigger for me, and I just do it naturally now. That's a resource anchor. It helps me to stay grounded in those situations instead of feeling overwhelmed by the adrenaline rush that we get. And again, record these positive events in your journal, a separate page down the back of your journal, something that's really easily accessible. All right, my favorite slide, the slide that is, for a lot of us, we brush it aside, and I am very guilty of it. I am still very guilty of this, but it's actually the thing that we need to be doing the most. So in here, I've talked about practicing, conditioning. Yet, do we reward ourselves for when we do actually follow through? Do we celebrate? Do we, pat ourselves on the back and say, well done? Do we potentially trigger a resource anchor and feel great for the time that emotion is able to be triggered? And creating celebrating our successes is a great way to build our momentum. Begin to build the momentum. So if you're feeling like you're not ready for that role, yet you've created an emotion that you want to experience, a thought, or an emotion that you want to experience, and you were able to do that for like 50% of that shift because you felt overwhelmed with what's going on. And then you start to celebrate when you get home. You go, yeah, I did really good. I was great during that time. You know what? 50% today, 47% yesterday. That's a 3% increase today. That is fantastic. Give yourself feel good. Celebrate. Feel fantastic. Why not? We have great neural pathways to feeling like crap. Why don't we start feeling great neural pathways to feeling really good? And celebrating is that way we're going to start to be building that momentum. As I just said, I'm very guilty of this. I'm very guilty of moving on to that next thing very quickly. Yep, done, moved on. Next thing, want to get to it. But who's here with me on this? I'd love to know who here is with me on this. Comment down below. I've got my thing here. Oh, interesting. Just saw the live feed. Just looks like some of the images are not going through very well. I might re-record it and then put it out for you guys. So, Who's here with me? Who here likes to move on really quickly and not celebrate? Awesome. All right. As imposters, we can often feel that we're not enough. Yet we don't celebrate this experience. We don't accelerate when we do step up, when we move past those feelings. What would happen if we did? How hard is it to say well done under your breath? Trigger those resources that are available to you. So I wonder if this is the simplest and easiest place to begin. Well, I'm curious. I do believe that it is. It's one of the most simplest and easiest places to begin. Something that you could put in tonight. What are 3 things that you could be really grateful for, that you did really well, that you achieved your goals? All right. So, what have we learnt? So we've learned imposter syndrome and about imposter syndrome and which filters are you. This is where you'll need to take some time, do some hard yards to start finding out which filters are you being affected by. Perception is projection. So that internal representation that you have going on, what's that saying? What's going on there? Just realised that not much of that image has been coming through on the other end. Interesting. Alright, so perception is projection. We want to begin to take control of the self-talk, that inner dialogue, that inner Woody Allen that's going on. You want to begin to take control of it. We want to start to bring together that internal conflict. Condition in the new neural pathways that you're creating, those new synaptic connections that you're creating. You want to start to strengthen them when you begin to make your change. And learn to celebrate. When you get off this webinar tonight and you finish writing things out, write out what is the 3 things that you're most grateful for and celebrate for today. Celebrate for what you've been able to achieve. All right, what I don't want you to be doing is wasting this opportunity. Don't try to do this on your own. You do need to either find a coach, an accountability partner, someone who does not have your view of the world that's going on. They're going to provide you with the insight, the distinctions that come from the different filters, the different perspectives. These are the filters that you want to be with trusted people who are able to help provide you with those insights. And don't waste this opportunity. It's been a great opportunity for you tonight to learn, to grow, and to develop. All right, so I hope that's been helpful for you guys. I'm just moving that over to my other screen where you guys are. So who knows what's going on? Just lost my feed going through on that end. All right, so guys, if you want to be claiming your free brainstorming session with me, make sure you DM or write in the comment section below. And in the coming weeks, I've actually been working on a book as well. It's just a short little book, but it's about the mind and the physiology. So the mind and the physiology and how they interact with each other, because we can change our mood and our state through movement. Yeah. And anyone that I know that has definitely worked with me knows I like to use my body a lot. I'm very active, and that affects our mood. It affects our internal representations. And so I've written a book about that, and now there's studies out to support how how our physiology does affect our mood. It affects our state. So I hope that was wonderful. I look forward to hearing from you guys in the not too distant future.